Welcome to the Gain Momentum podcast. We are now in our third year of recording, and we have a delightful episode to talk about a new program at Gain that is really focusing on accelerating groups and other sales efforts. I'm joined today by my co-host Vincent Thompson, and our guest today, is Amy Infante, Director of Gain Elevate. Amy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a delight to have you on because, for context, in 2026, as we're recording this, leisure as a segment is where it is in terms of occupancy stagnation in a lot of areas, but there's a lot of potential for group and other sales efforts. So, before we get into what hotels can do and what they should consider, let's start with your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the founder of GitGo Group, which is a agency that really focuses on delivery. So a lot of people know us as an outsourced firm. We have a team that actually can execute programs. So that's what we've been known for a really long time. I actually joined Gain last year. And the reason I joined Gain is because I saw this great synergy between having a team like GitGo who can execute and pilot programs and a group of advisors, including myself, who can help organizations, hotel companies to really figure out how to execute programs, like you mentioned, groups, meetings, programs, but it can be really any type of a program, business development wise, commercial wise. And those two sectors can come together really and help these companies to execute better.
Okay. And now you have a role at Gain, Director of Gain Elevate. What is that in an elevator pitch before we get into the big why behind it?
Gain Elevate is actually a program that was designed based on, I think I've alluded to it a little bit when I was sharing about GitGo. But really, what I've seen at GitGo is companies a lot of times will come to me and say, we have this problem. And it's usually something centered around revenue generation, right? We need more revenue. It's everybody's problem, right? Everyone wants more revenue. They come to me with that problem, and they usually have this. A lot of times, the larger organizations will have had a large consulting firm come in and give a structure, advice, and then they leave. And GitGo is left to execute that advice. And there's usually very disconnected systems at play. A lot of times it comes to the tech stack. And we are tasked with actually trying to put it back all together. And so when I approached Gain and said, hey, and we were talking about this kind of synergy with our two groups, we talked about how wouldn't it be nice if we could have the Gain advisors who are so deeply involved in the industry, lots of great experience, both on the tech side and on the hotel group side, be able to design a program, help build the enablement, like a playbook, essentially, KPIs, what should we measure, and then have this execution arm to help pilot those programs to make it essentially more to mitigate the risk for those companies. So that's really kind of the background of Gain and why Gain Elevate, I should say, and why it exists and why we built it and really what we're here to do and help customers tackle.
Now, let's take a big step back or look big picture. Um, we are now in 2026, and the situation on the ground in terms of the sales process and what people or what companies are looking for in groups is drastically different than what it was even 3 years ago. So, give us some ideas about how the sales process is changing.
So a lot of times what I'm hearing from customers is they are struggling keeping up with all of the change that's happening, as you mentioned. And really, what I like to do is kind of take a step back with the customers. And when you say process, right? Yes, it's changing because there's more automation built into technology. There's more AI built into all the technology. Like it's there for them, but they're the basics of the infrastructure of what they have to do to be able to build business revenue. um, we have to get back to the basics first, right? We have to implement the basics. And that is as simple as, with property level, I see all the time. We have sales managers that are in a seat and they're tasked with doing everything. They have to prospect for new business, they have to build relationships with customers, they're doing all of the, you know, administrative work. And really what's missing in that is a marketing funnel, a true marketing funnel. And we see it all the time with our tech vendors, right? That we work with, the technology companies. They have a real systematized structure of how they do their marketing funnel and build leads that come in. And what I see at the hotel level is we're on shelves, we're on different platforms. And so we utilize those for our inbound leads. But what's happening is the customers are using those as portals. So there's a disconnect because we're seeing that business come in when the customer is ready to connect with the salesperson, right? They need rates, dates, and space. So it's very reactionary, but there is no proactive sales funnel being built, generally speaking. And that's where I think the biggest disconnect is and what hotels need to do with to build a process, and then really understand how that proactive piece is different from the reactive. So we do a lot of education on that, at GitGo because we work in that space so much, but also in the advisory work that I do, that's a big piece of it.
Could you give us a sense of some tactical items that would be a part of this proactive sales funnel?
Yeah, absolutely. It's as simple as first off, Vincent and I work on this a lot together. So, Vincent, feel free to chime in on this if you want. Building a good target audience list. So, the understanding the ICP of the hotel, and a lot of properties are just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. And they've got a lot of ideas who their target audience is, but they really have not had a lot of conversation with those customers, so they're unfamiliar with their needs and likes and demands. They're kind of making a lot of assumptions, and so I think it's really important, tactically to build a strong ICP, and there's a lot of tools out there that we use that help us to do that. I also think that it's important to, then you build an email campaign, a targeted email campaign with clear messaging that's relevant and compelling to business buyer. We're not talking the same as a leisure target campaign. What a lot of the brands provide, right? They're reaching out to individuals and leisure travelers. This is really specific to the B2B customers. So building that campaign and making it consistent so that there's a series of messages going out to those customers and you're constantly getting the impressions, the visibility, the awareness. And then you've got to build in your structure with the sales team to be able to action on what's happening with that email campaign. So that's kind of a gist, a little bit of the tactics and some of the strategy as well.
And I think, Adam, what we've seen in the past as well, that every property, every asset within a group has their own specific strategy or tactic. And what we're saying is really determine on a portfolio or even corporate point of view the strategy and enable your properties with the tools to drive the strategy that you from a corporate level set. So if you have tools that can actually enrich your entire contact list, your entire target list within a couple of minutes, instead of having to research your decision maker at a specific company every time. Every time you do that, there's a lot of stats out there that talk about how many minutes or many hours are spent enriching and researching lists of companies. Right. So if you have the tools in the system, again, from a corporate level, to enable you to actually spend more time talking to these folks, talking to your potential customers, instead of just doing manual and mundane work that a robot or an AI can do for you, is something that we really try to encourage the clients that we talk to, nowadays. And that wasn't possible in the past, but now with the technologies that we've seen, in the last 12 months, it is possible to, increase your productivity of your teams, your marketing teams, your sales teams, sometimes double. So it's really important to look at the technology that enables your strategy.
So just to backtrack here, what is an ICP? So we're clear on
Oh,
it.
thank you. Yeah.
And how would you go about building an ICP on paper for the corporate level or brand level to then guide the asset or the property level execution?
It's ideal client profile. That is what a ICP is. It's your target audience. So most hoteliers that might be listening to this probably understand building your segmentation and the target within that segmentation. So, like, one segment would be corporate group business. So, if you're a property or a specific brand, it's important to think about what types of groups would come to your hotel, or what does your brand really attract? Is it entertainment groups, the cruise? Is it construction crew business? Is it consulting and training types of groups that come to the hotel? It could be many different types of groups. We work with large properties or companies that have very large convention hotels, and so it's, association, market, and large training meetings and incentives groups. So it can vary, but I think it's really important to be very specific and write those out, document them, and then make sure that when you're building that audience, that your marketing, your email messaging is driven towards that audience, right? So you're not throwing promotions out at an association that, would not pertain.
Right. So you start with the ICP, and then from there, you're applying that to a CRM to figure out who's going to be in each segment within the ICP to then develop very, very bespoke emails and marketing journeys that really, really drive the engagement, open rate, clicks, and then getting people down the funnel. Is that what you're doing?
Absolutely. And in a lot of cases, customers already have client lists. They're very messy, though. And it's difficult, that, like Vincent said, making sure that the data is accurate and clean and you have the right contacts. That's a lot of work. But ideally, you combine um, new targets and companies that you have not ever spoken to with more low hanging fruit that is, they may have heard of you, and you can do messaging to those types of groups differently as well.
And there is a org chart nature to this evolution in 2026, where we've talked about, developing an ICP at the corporate level, and then that needs to be enforced and directed on the property level. Horizontally, we are seeing this evolution towards a unified commercial department, which brings together sales, marketing, communications, and a few others. Is that what you're seeing on the ground?
It's a wide variety, to be honest. I think the reality and the vision still have room to come together. But there are companies that have completely restructured in terms of title and org chart, but it's a lot of change management right now. And I think, what I talk a lot about, I know we might be talking about this in a bit, HSMAI, um, the Hotel Sales and Marketing Association. So I'm on some advisory boards with them, and the conversation is really huge around commercial and the structure. Um, and what I've really been trying to promote is that within the change management, it's about simple things like meeting cadence and bringing the team together on the right topics and aligning. Um, it's not just throwing titles out there and saying, "Okay, now you report up into this one commercial role." It's really making sure that we do it all the time in the entrepreneurial environment. I follow something called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it has a real clear structure around how your meetings run and how, your what metrics you're looking at, your scorecard. And I think that's something that the hospitality industry can and should adopt when we're talking about going more commercial and looking at this structure.
So this organizational reorientation, and your EOS, how would you help to bring sales and marketing teams closer together, knowing that we have this ICP, which needs to be segmented within a CRM, and then goes out to uh, email communications, e-blasts, or marketing journeys? That does involve pieces of technology that are used by both sales and marketing teams. How do you bring them together so there's more cohesion? So therefore, you can make the messaging even better, and then really develop that funnel.
Yeah, I think ideally you want them to be working on a unified scorecard around that and understand, where does marketing really fit in on that scorecard? Like, so often, I mean, in other industries, we see that marketing owns lead generation, right? They really are, their job is to bring leads into the funnel. And if we're looking at property level in the hotel world, and in some cases even above property, a lot of times we say no, sales is lead generation in the hospitality industry. So I think it's within the organization becoming really clear on what that means and what the scorecard is. And when you talk about technology, so many of the customers I've worked with have, marketing's been using this piece of tech and sales has been using this and revenue management's been using this, and they none of them speak to each other. And so I think you have to take that in a very careful, phased approach to figure out what makes the most sense. I mean, that's you're talking CapEx there. So we've got to be smart about it and really that's where advisory can be very beneficial, I think, is taking a good outside perspective assessment of that and then really being mindful around what makes the most sense. I think, all of us have kind of been in an entrepreneurial environment ourselves. And I think that's one of the benefits of Gain is having both a corporate level and an entrepreneurial level perspective and very much about phasing and being reasonable and risk mitigation when it comes to implementing new things because I've seen so many companies, we've been like I was saying earlier at GitGo, we kind of come in at the back end a lot of times of these big projects. And there's been a lot of CapEx expense on certain technology pieces or structures. And it is a nightmare. It's a mess. And so why not think about that more intentionally on the front end of how you can phase it and mitigate the risk and the change management and all of that. And then, you know, piece it together reasonably and responsibly for the company.
Yeah. So, Amy, is the intention here to after you design, enable, and really execute this program, to stay with the company for the coming years, or is this really an approach where at one point you take your hands off? Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I think it's dependent on the organization that you're working with. I mean, from my experience with GitGo, I mean, our intention is in a lot of cases to help customers accelerate the process of everything we've just talked about because we know ultimately in a commercial organization, it's about hitting the revenue targets, right? Simple as that. We have to accelerate to revenue. But all the while doing that, you've got to set up your structure and get it sound and implemented. And so our intention is in a lot of cases to accelerate that and get it internalized as quickly as possible um, without having to go backwards, right? And that's what I see so often is with, traditional consulting, swoop in, tell you what to do, and then swoop out, and then the company is left to figure out how to put all the pieces together and make it work. Where this is really to hold the hand throughout all of that process very intentionally. And then the execution piece can be as simple as a pilot for, 60 days, 30 days, 6 months. And in some cases, it lasts longer because the company realizes, hey, we don't want to bring on more headcount, more overhead, more risk. We're going to continue this path for a year. Maybe it's 2 years. Some of our programs have been, nearly a decade, but it evolves and changes over time because our industry is evolving and changing over time. And so they realize, okay, this program needs to graduate into something else.
There's one other element to your work here, and this is a thing that is confusing to everyone outside of the hospitality industry. How does your work vary from independent to branded or flagged or franchised hotel, and also with management companies?
That's a great question, actually. I could see why folks would get confused by that. Um, so I think, in terms of the work, it doesn't change that much. Like from a get-go perspective, we're constantly focused on business development and generating revenue, right? Doing the actions that need to be done. But the nuance of how that gets done from a branded to an independent can be quite different just because of some of the, I don't want to say restrictions, but I mean, let's just be honest, restrictions with the brand. We don't always have the access to the data because they keep that at the brand or the chain level. And so the property level doesn't have that much visibility all the time. And so there's that. There's a little bit more flexibility with the digital marketing aspect from an independent side. Um, I would say that maybe this isn't answering your question, so feel free to keep digging, Adam, but, I would say that the work is very similar. It's how we execute that because my main thing is always we're meeting our customers where they are today, right? That's the whole thing is you can't get further along unless we truly understand what's happening right now and what the challenge really is, and I think so problem solving today with the world of AI is going to be the most important piece of what advisory can do for customers and leaders inside of organizations. You have to be a great problem solver, but you have to figure out what the actual problem is that you're trying to solve. And a lot of times, what happens is we get a call and this is the problem, right? But that is the surface level problem. And we need to go layers and layers deeper. And I don't think that changes whether you're a management company or an independent or a brand. That's the foundation. And then how we execute that is the fun part because that's where the variety comes in and the creativity and really, rolling up our sleeves and getting into the work.
Yeah. Amy, can you give an example of a problem that somebody mentioned to you? They called you up and said, "Okay, we have this problem," but actually there was a deeper root cause that was causing that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time, but one that comes top of mind is a company reached out because they wanted to enhance their global sales organization. Let's just say that. I'm going to try to keep this very broad because I'm very particular about keeping my clients anonymous. They needed to enhance their global sales organization, um, but the root challenge was actually that they did not have the infrastructure and the technology designed so um, that they could, share opportunities across regions, really show what they're doing to their stakeholders. It was a technology issue. And so we have to first tackle the tech stack and designing that so that it can function globally.
On the note of using technology to help solve these problems, or at least reveal the problem under the problem, what data or metrics would you use to reveal that problem or another problem like it, as well as to show that the plans you're enacting are actually working?
Typically, when a customer reaches out and they say they have a revenue problem, right? We need revenue. We need to dig into what's the volume coming in today. These are some of the kind of little things that I look at. Like what kind of volume do you have coming in and where is it coming from? What is your revenue gap? Like where are you versus what you originally forecasted or where you thought you would be? Why did you think you would be there? What's the history? What is the historical data to that? And what's the conversion rate? And it's shocking how many hotels and companies do not know what their conversion rate is, um, from whether it's inbound or they're creating the opportunities. Mostly it's reactive sales, right?
Uh, just a note of clarification, because conversion rate, are you talking about a conversion like a form fill, or are you talking about a conversion as in a sales close?
A sales close. Yeah, that's what in on my side of the house in B2B, we always talk about, like, because 'cause we're signing contracts with
Yeah.
customers, right? So it's a sales closed. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, yeah, that's part of the problem bringing teams together because in marketing, a conversion, it can be whatever you define it to be in terms of a measured call to action, right? So it's
Mhm.
bringing teams together across a common language as well as common data as well and common systems.
Yep.
And yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion too around, attribution, right? That's a
yeah.
big, debate, and we have that same debate too, even in on the group side of the house, and when we're talking about, even signing, like, corporate transient contracts and things like that for with customers, um, where did it originally come from, right? Who takes credit for it? At the end of the day, I believe that the metrics that we should be looking at are the key metrics to the stakeholders, to the owners. What are their care abouts? Because every property owner is a little bit different and the reason why they have their asset and what they're trying to do with it. And so I think that's where commercial teams need to be aligned and have better business acumen around profitability and, looking at the asset in that same way.
So to bridge the gap now again between sales and marketing, you mentioned earlier that you're part of an organization called H.S.M.A.I. How are you involved and what's the value for hotels to be involved in this organization?
Yes, I have been involved with the HSMAI. I can't even. remember the number of years now, but I started out on the sales advisory board and did 3 terms on that board where I was co-chairing the commercial strategy work group, with a wonderful woman named Lori Keel, who many know. And, we helped build KPIs and design a lot of the things that we're talking about today, around, what should you be measuring against as a commercial organization, and each of the different kind of departments, marketing, sales, revenue optimization, what should they be looking at? Kind of guidelines and benchmarks in that regard. And now I'm on the marketing advisory board. And so I switched because you can only be on one advisory board for so long and then they kick you off. And so I was like, I'll do marketing now, which is great. And I think, and then I helped to co author a chapter in the Certified Hotel Sales Leader certification program. So there's a book, and Kira Feely and I wrote the chapter on leadership for that, which was a lot of fun. And it also incorporates some of the things we talked about around cadence and just building your organization within your commercial structure and leading that organization to success. Um, I think that the benefits to HSMAI membership are twofold. It's definitely education. So, having the access to those benchmarks and the articles and the thought leadership that they put out is really important, as well as the networking. I mean, it's HSMAI's commercial strategy conference is at the same time as high tech. So they're always in the same location, and it's great because there's so much cohesion now and synergy between tech stacks and the vendors that are needed for these commercial leaders. And so I hope to see in 2026 that the two converge a little bit more, and hopefully Gain can be a huge part of that with our new Gain Elevate program.
Yeah, that brings us full circle back to Gain Elevate. So we've talked about the unique problems across different hotels, teams not talking to each other, technology, silos, everything. What are the biggest challenges that Gain Elevate solves?
It's a great question. I think really we solve complex problems when it comes to sustainable revenue generation. And I don't just mean like what GitGo has been doing with business development all these years, right? Like that's one piece of it. But companies have the ability and the opportunity to build robust programs that can allow them more of a foundation and a, like, consistency, right? We see so many peaks and valleys in our industry. It's seasonal, and we, like, we've got our teams that it's all of a sudden we build a business development team because we see there's a dip coming. So now everybody puts all these resources into outreach and business development, and then things get good and that slows down and we decide to cut that team. Like, that happens all the time. Um, and I think what Gain has the opportunity to do with the experience of the advisors and with the execution of the get-go side of the house is we can really help solve these problems more sustainably, and help customers see the opportunity to keep that consistency. And I don't know, Vincent, what are your thoughts on that? Because you and I spend so much time talking about this. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great opportunities here is really to work with people that have done it before, right? All the Gain advisors and especially Amy are so experienced and actually worked with hotel groups in the past or worked for like Hilton, Marriott, or even smarter boutique hotel firms, right? So and that's also what I believe sets us apart from traditional consulting or advisory firms. It's really this senior team that actually has experience on the floor in the industry at corporate level or on property level, that now show the experience and provide the value to multiple companies and multiple hotels, and that's really something that I feel sets us apart. And also, we're here to stay, right? Like Amy said, it's not in and out. It's okay. We design, enable, and execute, right? So it's not just a report here, Mr. CCO or Mrs. CCO, and be and see you next year when you're still in trouble, right? We actually execute the strategy that the advisors plan. And it's like Amy said multiple times, it's really risk mitigation, and that's why hotels choose us in order to create that strategy and also execute it.
So when we're looking at deploying Gain Elevate at a hotel or a group or a brand, and you mentioned this idea of consistency in revenue generation and sustainability. What are some common missteps that hotel groups are taking to achieve consistency and sustainability in revenue generation?
A common misstep I see is not creating the infrastructure so that sales and marketing can work together to build that revenue, and really aligning on what are what's the scorecard, what are the KPIs that each is going to contribute, and how does that align to the overall goal of the property or the portfolio, the group, right? So to get a little bit more specific around that, um, I get calls all the time from hotel management companies even that say, we have properties that are really struggling. And then we have properties that are doing great. And I don't need your help with the properties that are doing great. I need help with the ones that are struggling. That's, fine, fair. But when we look at the holistic picture, I see that there is no structure for marketing and and sales to really work together cohesively. And so, what I mean by that is kind of what we've discussed a little bit earlier was, having the infrastructure within your CRM so that you can put out consistent messaging, especially in the B2B space. A lot of hotels and even management companies, they don't have strong databases. And so the contacts are outdated or they're incorrect, inaccurate. They're not familiar with their ideal target customer. And so there's nothing being done proactively to push messaging out to those customers to gain visibility and engagement, or there's very little. It might be like I talked to a hotel company recently and it was like, well, here and there, we're sending MailChimp emails into our existing database, but that's not consistent. And I think that's, it's real basic, right? You've got to have consistent and you need the infrastructure in place, the technology, the systems, and the processes in place to make sure that your sales team isn't just sitting in the seat saying, who do I call today? What do I do next? And because they're not going to make cold calls, right? They're just not going to do it in today's world. And your customers don't necessarily want a cold call. So, how do we warm up those contacts and generate some engagement and excitement around the property? And that there has to be a system to do that. And I think that's the biggest misstep is, companies are dabbling in it here and there, but not taking a step back and taking time to build it out so that it is best in class. And that's, one thing that advisory can bring to the table. And I think what's nice is all the while you're building it, you can um, be executing on a program because at GitGo, we already have the infrastructure built in place. And so the nice thing with Gain Elevate is we can build it for you while the execution team has it already built outside of your infrastructure, and you can start seeing those revenue results before you even have it built inside your own organization.
It's really, really insightful about, just this whole idea of system design and really deploying it and getting that outside expertise to sort of see the big picture for what it is and how teams can better function together using technology and unified systems. So, Amy, to finish off here, what do you see on the horizon for the remainder of this decade in terms of trends and disruptions that are going to impact commercial strategy for hotel teams?
Well, I hope that we're not having these same conversations in, 6 years, because I thought in 2020 that, um, things would change a little bit more and we would see more companies adopting this, this kind of commercial system that we're talking about, a little bit more quickly. But I do see that it's happening slowly but surely, which is great. And I think that some of the things we have to watch out for, obviously, we all have been talking about AI, and the agentic search and how customers are actually going to be booking. I think that's going to impact group business as well. Um, and, there's travel agencies, all the different customer segments that are out there for the commercial team to focus on in terms of B2B, I think are going to be impacted by AI and new ways of booking the business. And so I think there's this fear that that cuts out some of those commercial team players. But like I said, I don't think it cuts out the ones who are really great at solving problems, because what AI can't do for you is it can't actually tell you what the problem is. You have to feed it the problem, and then it can help you solve it, right? It can help you put some of those pieces in to solve it, but you actually have to understand and know what the problem is. And I think that, we all just have to be really uh, engaged and intentional around our business to be able to do that.
Amy, those are incredible words to live by, and I really hope that we've made some progress in the next 5 years. But it's oftentimes once you're on that hamster wheel, it's very hard to get off, and that's what we're here for. And with the Gain Elevate program and others to help people see the big picture and to really ramp up their sales efforts by improving the systematic design behind it. So,
Absolutely.
Amy, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute delight. And yeah, again, it would be great to follow up in 2 years' time to get you back on the show to see has things actually changed materially.
Absolutely. I hope it's sooner than 2 years, but
Amy, thank you. Vincent, thank you again.
thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.